And, you and I have spoken privately about this, the representations of Father Frank Brennan, a respected lawyer, Indigenous advocate, someone that wants the voice to get up. You've got that representation from Julian Leeser that you spoke about, others like Greg Craven. And I think you make the point. It's almost tragic, though, in its prediction. But you say if it fails, the Yes advocates cannot complain they were not warned about some of these legitimate fears.
Yes, I just cannot believe that this is not being engaged with more seriously. You have a large chunk of Conservative people who actually want to have a voice or something like it. And I would remind people watching, it was the Conservatives who pushed the 1967 referendum through. It was actually William Charles Wentworth IV, who was a Menzies minister who was an agitator for Aboriginal rights. The idea that the right of politics has been the problem here all along is just not the case. Often it's been the right of politics that's been pushing through these things. And I would remind people who disagree with this is that great reforms are often an inside job in the way that only Nixon could go to China, etc. You need a number of Conservatives to support a change such that normal people who are not particularly political but are very protective of their constitution would feel safe in agreeing to it. And if I can just give one example, the sidelining of the Reverend Father Frank Brennan, a Jesuit priest, one of the most respected Australians by Australians of any politics and none. The sidelining of him in this debate, I think, has been absolutely disgraceful. And I would remind people, but for the Brennans, plural, both Sir Gerard Brennan, the former Chief Justice of the High Court, who wrote the leading judgment in Mabo, and Father Frank Brennan, the constitutional lawyer and Jesuit priest, I wonder whether we would even be having this discussion about a voice now. And the sidelining of Father Frank Brennan has just been appalling, and I think it reflects a lot of the way this debate has been conducted as a way to almost shut out people who could help you because you want to sort of have the cause run to the finish line, even if you lose. And I would ask people who are on the Yes campaign to ponder this. If you wake up the day after the referendum and the proposal has been defeated in circumstances where it could have succeeded had you been willing to compromise and listen to other people, how will you ever live with yourself as Australians? Because we share this country together, and we should not be put in the position where Australians have to either vote against their Indigenous brothers and sisters or vote for a flawed model. And I think everyone needs to take a step back and think of the country.
Well, and it's not like there's not other options. Like you said, we touched on Julian Leeser's proposal. You got Father Frank suggesting that instead of saying the voice can make representations to the executive, you say ministers of state, therefore you remove any suggestion that public servants might be caught up in the amendment to the Constitution. There are ways that can be done, and subsequently, if those that want representations to the executive to be achieved, that can be legislated at a subsequent point. These are very clear alternatives that would empower more people that want to back the voice to vote yes.
Yes, indeed. And I mean, I have a slightly different take from both of Julian and Father Frank. I would actually put their voice in Chapter 2, convened by the Governor-General, as effectively an advisor to the Crown, because most of the decisions that affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders are made in the executive government. So that's where I would put it. But the point is, you have a debate about these things, and the parliamentary process was ridiculous. You had a few weeks of debate. It was done over the Jewish Passover and Christian Easter period, when very few people would have been able to get there to give evidence. I still put my hand up. I was not called upon. I know a number of people who are also not called upon. The process was ridiculous, and yet under our Constitution, Section 128 vests in the Parliament the power to authorise the referendum that will go to the people. And the Parliament just simply abdicated its responsibilities. And I think this has been such a shambolic process. However it results, it's been such a terrible process, and it sets a terrible precedent for how other governments in future times may wish to push through things that may not have wide support. I just think this has been handled terribly badly, and the government of the day and the Parliament of today needs to take a step back and think, what are we doing and what are we trying to achieve?